I know you guys are going to want to find out what I think about blasting and cruising. Stay tuned. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, whatever you have on your mind, it is all on the table. As we go right into the questions, the first question on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Question: with all the heart issues in bodybuilding, have you thought of making a species supplement for preventative heart health?
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I've gotten this question numerous times. And, you know, when I design my nutrition products, I'm always designing them not only with performance in mind, but health in mind as well. So Vmineraliz, which is our vitamin, mineral, trace metal, antioxidant, polyphenolic product, it's the most comprehensive on the market. And by the way, I know everyone's driving me crazy because we ran out of it, but the new version is coming in like a week. So I would say one more week, we should have the new Vmineraliz, which is not only has more vitamin D3 in it, I've upped it to 5,000 IUs. It has K2 in it, which we know directs the calcium away from the blood vessels. A lot of people are deficient in K2. It's one of these vitamins a lot of people don't supplement with. It's going to be in there in the right dosage. And we're also adding methylated folic acid, something that I was wanting to change for quite a while. We already had methylated cobalamin, which is methylated vitamin B12, but we didn't have the methylated folic acid. Now we're going to have methylated. So all the B vitamins are methylated, the ones that need to be methylated. That means they're activated. So even if you have that gene defect, which a lot of people do, myself included, which we don't methylate folic acid or methylate B12, it doesn't matter anymore, because now it's in the formula already. So that Vmineraliz formula is going to be released, like I said, within a week. It's just being shipped to our warehouse at this point. And it really is so complete that you don't need to take anything with it. And I did that purposely because I hated having 25 vitamin bottles on my counter. So everything's in there in the right dosage. You don't need to add anything to that. When you get sick, you might want to add a little extra vitamin C, but it's unnecessary, really. Everything in the right dosage is in there. And I'm super proud of this new formula that's coming out. It's great. And then we also have the essential fatty acid supplement, which is Vmineraliz, which it lowers cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, that is LDL. It theoretically could raise the good HDL cholesterol. It reduces inflammation in the body, which a lot of us have excessive inflammation, which is obviously can lead to heart problems and coronary artery disease. So if you take Vmineraliz and Vmineraliz on a daily basis, which a lot of you guys do, because I know I see all the orders coming in, and there are number 1 and 2 selling products, then you don't have to worry about heart health. You've got it covered. Now, obviously, you have to eat a good diet, and you want to make sure that your blood sugars are good and all that other stuff, and the blood pressure is under control. But as far as supplementation, there are no other things that you need to add on top of those two things. And that's the wonderful thing about the line. So it's performance geared, because we know that we need vitamins, minerals, and trace metals as cofactors in all the chemical reactions in our body. That means to build muscle, protein synthesis reactions, to metabolize carbohydrates, and to oxidize fats. You need all those vitamins, minerals, and trace metals. They're cofactors. And if you don't have enough of them, you can't do those reactions at optimal rates. So when you see what the FDA would call the recommended daily allowance, that's for a person doing nothing all day long. When you exercise at the level that bodybuilders are doing and break down that much muscle, you need a lot more of these vitamins, minerals, trace metals, and essential fatty acids. So that's why it's important to supplement. So I got you covered. Your health is going to be covered in terms of heart health, inflammation, cholesterol levels, essential fatty acid requirements, which is important for the brain function and muscle repair. So I've already thought about this, and I'm always trying to come up with new stuff and new ideas. And when methylation became a big deal, when I started researching and noticing that the 2,000 IUs of vitamin D3 wasn't enough, and I was telling people to take more, I upped the dosage. So I'm always evolving these products, but by and far, I think I would say they're pretty perfect right now.
Before we go to the rest of our questions, our friends at Titan Medical Center have a New Year's sale on basically all of their services, all their therapies. Sorry?
On everything.
Oh, on everything. Right. Okay. Yeah. No, when you say something, I'm like, wait, am I muted? But yeah. So you want to tell the audience a little bit more about what Titan Medical Center has available in store to start 2026.
Right. Usually when you have these rejuvenation centers, they do sales on specific products. But, like we do at Species Nutrition, on our sales, we usually give a coupon code for, 30% off the entire website. That's what Titan Medical is doing for New Year's. Everything is discounted. So if you call up and you say Dave Palumbo and or RX Muscle Center, you're going to get a discount on any therapy that you buy from them, which is awesome. This doesn't happen very often. Usually it's a specific one. So I take, glutathione from them. I take NAD plus from them. I take their new Glow thing, which is the BPC 157, TB 500, and the copper peptide all combined. If I was, getting all this stuff, I'd get it all now. I'd buy the next, month or two, because this way I'm getting the discount on it. If you're buying it anyway and you're using it every month, you might as well up it now, because this is a great time to get that discount and take advantage of it. So remember, tell them Dave Palumbo, RX Muscle Center, you're going to get a great discount. And I want to mention also the Dave Palumbo Experience app is an app where you can download on your iTunes or Android store. It's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. You get access to all my writings, all my videos. We do a Q&A video every single week on the show. So it's like an extra Ask Dave just for the app members. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum. All my protocols are up there. My keto diet, cyclical keto diet, off-season diet, all my drug protocols are up there. This week, we might not have a Q&A video because my app partner, I think he has a sickness in the family. But every single week, we have a video up there normally. So check it out, the Dave Palumbo Experience app. And that's, once again, thank you for all your support for that.
Let's take the rest of our questions from our Facebook page, our Instagram, as well as our YouTube community page. 54 years old, has high blood pressure. He wants to know, what's the safer route? Is TRT or a course of peptides?
He wants to know how to cure his high blood pressure? Is that what he's...
I guess it's either that or a very vague way of saying what is the better way to go as far as his bodybuilding aspirations, to go TRT or peptides.
I think what he wants to know is which is better, because he has high blood pressure. Well, first of all, what I would do is I would control your high blood pressure. There's no reason you should be walking around with high blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, like most of us do who are older, we take a blood pressure medication. I take an ACE inhibitor, Ramipril, whatever you take. Once you take that blood pressure medication, it should get you into normal range. Once you're in normal range, it doesn't matter what you do at that point. So you can take your HRT, you can take peptides, you can do both, as long as your blood pressure is controlled. A lot of people think that steroids raise blood pressure. They don't normally do that unless you're holding excessive amounts of fluid. On TRT dosages, that's not going to happen. However, if you take TRT and you gain weight, and that can include muscle weight, okay, if you gain 10, 15 pounds of muscle, you might need to take more of your blood pressure medication, because it could potentially raise your blood pressure. It doesn't mean it's going to, but I just noticed even on my own body, the lighter that I am, the better my blood pressure numbers are. When I get a little heavier, then, I notice it goes up a little, but that's just normal, because more muscle, more blood pumping to those muscles, higher pressure. So once again, if your blood pressure is controlled, which I would assume it is, if it's not, you're not taking the right blood pressure medication, or you're not taking enough, you can use both. That's not a problem.
So we do get this question time and time again. I know it is one of your favorite topics, and it is about blasting and cruising. Now, bear with me. I believe this is a bit of a Google Translate question, but I'll try to summarize best as I can. Today, they blast and cruise. Back in the 80s and 90s, us bodybuilders took 4 to 5 months between cycles on zero TRT. What was the typical breakdown between cycles in the mid-90s off any test zero TRT?
Yeah. I know for a fact, I had a few people who are friends of mine. Most guys that I was around in the New York area went off cycle after shows or after periods of time of being on cycle, because most of the guys were listening to me. So I was advising them. They were listening. I do know people that would stay on a little testosterone. And I noticed that those people didn't make the improvements every year that the guys that would go off did. And that was the first little tidbit of evidence that I had that, you know what, it's important to go off because something's going on. And that's how I knew about, androgen receptor sensitivity, And then we hear these guys go crazy about androgen receptors. But the bottom line is that when you go off and then you go back on, you get better results. It's not just a cleaning out thing. It's an actual resetting of the body. So most guys went off in the 90s because that was an acceptable practice. Nowadays, they came up with these little slang, urban sayings, blasting and cruising, and they made it seem as though it was a technique that people needed to use to get better results. And what it really was a rationalization as to why you don't need to go off cycle, because people are mental cases and they can't handle the fact that, oh my God, I might not have a 6,000 testosterone for the next 2 months. God forbid my testosterone's a little low for 2 months. I'm going to lose every bit of muscle that I spent the last 10 years building, which is obviously not true. But that's what they think in their head, so that they can't handle it. So they have to create, TikTok, Instagram, sayings. We'll blast and cruise. Everyone blasts and cruises, or bridges, and they have all these different sayings. It's just a rationalization once again to not go off cycle. There's nothing wrong going on. You're not gonna, if you eat right and you train right and you sleep and rest and take the right supplementation, you're not going to lose anything in 8 weeks. It's impossible. Okay, 4 weeks, you're going to still have stuff in your system, and to be off for 4 weeks, nothing's happening. The only thing you're going to do is lose some red blood cells, because the red blood cells have a lifespan of 120 days. And when you're off cycle, you don't produce as many red blood cells, which drops your blood volume, which is why you lose the pump. Okay. And your recovery might be less, because obviously testosterone helps with recovery. I have no problem with people staying on a little growth hormone in that off period, because growth hormone is not going to affect the androgen receptors at all. And if that makes your head feel good and helps you with recovery, then that's great. I don't have a problem with that, as long as you're not becoming too insulin resistant. So the problem was in the 90s, people went off. And maybe that's why guys got better results. I don't know. I don't know what the reason is, but the typical dosages, I started the whole 1,000 milligrams of testosterone trend, and people thought I was insane. Like today, when you hear people say, oh, I'm on 5 grams of gear, you say, oh, that guy's insane, right? Well, that's what they thought about me back then on 1,000. On 1 gram, which is, now it's chump change today, but it's still I still recommend 1,000 milligrams of testosterone a week with anabolics on top of that. That's ideal. It's the least side effects, the most effective. And the only reason why I recommend that is because I've experimented with different dosages on not only on me, but on other guys that I was helping. And we always found that worked the best, and it provided and it caused the least side effects. So you can listen or not, it doesn't matter, but guys got big in the 90s. Okay, on those dosages. So it obviously works. So that doesn't mean more is better. Now, Boston Lloyd came up with this rationalization. He might be right. May he rest in peace. He felt that he had to take more because the gear today was weaker or was underdosed. And that might be the case, because a lot of this underground stuff is unpredictable. But I know that when you take the hormone replacement, stuff that they prescribe at these clinics, I'm on HRT, it's very potent. So maybe guys are using underdosed gear, and that's why they have to take more. But don't feel a need to have to take 3 grams of testosterone a week. That's just not the right way to do it.
Question about off season. I'm improving in the gym. Weight gain is good, but lately I don't recover as well. Should I do less sets, or should I train less often? I usually do 5 days a week, 2 days off. Also, medium cycle, no GH yet.
When you feel like you're not making progress and you feel stagnant, it probably means you have to change something. Now, sometimes it could be that, maybe you need an extra day or 2 off a week, for a week or so. I never was big into taking a whole week off. Because I psychologically couldn't handle it, but I would take a couple extra days off if I felt like under the weather or whatever. I wasn't really getting the pumps I wanted. Usually I found that if I'm taking 2 days off per week and something's not going right in the gym, it's usually diet related. Sometimes I noticed I was eating too clean. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I was eating like my meals, but everything was like, white rice, potatoes, lean chicken. I was making everything in my house because I was maybe trying to save money or something like that. I didn't want to go out to eat. And for some reason, it was just too clean, the food. Then I would go eat like a junky meal. I'd go to McDonald's, or I would go, to some restaurant where I would eat like some greasy Italian food. And all of a sudden, the next day in the gym, I was like killing it. My weights all went up. I was strong. I was a little bloated, but I was so. Sometimes, the diet could be the issue too, because maybe you're just eating too clean, because maybe you're making all your own food and you're not adding anything to it. And you might just be deprived of something. A lot of times it's just fats. When I tend to eat my foods at home, I eat all clean fats, like, avocados and macadamia nut oil, since we make it from Species Nutrition, and whole eggs, stuff like that. And sometimes it's just a little too clean. And sometimes you need some of that pro-inflammatory, greasy crap, that they put on the that they make the French fries in, or the chicken, fingers or something like that, or some pizza with all that, cheese, all that other crap on it. And sometimes you look a lot better and you feel better. Every once in a while, I don't eat a lot of red meat in my diet, but every once in a while I'll go and I'll have a steak. And I feel like so strong in the gym the next day. It's unbelievable. And it's not that the steak is making me stronger. It's the fact that I'm deficient in something. Maybe there's not enough creatine, because, when you don't eat red meat, the creatine in like fish and stuff like that is very low. Maybe I'm not getting enough creatine in my diet or something like that. Your body, if you listen to it, will tell you what it needs. And I'm very good. I've been doing this a long time at listening to what my body needs, and I can kind of figure it out. It's usually not an overtraining thing. It's usually a food issue. However, if you feel exhausted and you're just getting terrible workouts at the gym, then I would recommend taking a few days off. But I don't think you need to take like a week or two off. I think that's excessive.
Well, earlier in the episode, we had a heart-related question as far as whether you would ever put forth any species supplements that were specific to heart health. Well, this one is about EKGs, and should someone see a cardiologist. Said he had an EKG done, had an acute MI, went to the hospital, high sensitivity troponin was 24. I did a second EKG and they told me I was fine. Should I see a cardiologist? I don't have any chest pain or anything like that.
I would immediately go and get either to an emergency room or to, a cardiologist. I mean, and you immediately need to get a cardiac CT scan with contrast done, because you could have a blockage in your coronary arteries and it can cause another heart attack. This is not like something that you should be taking very lightly. You have to see what those coronary arteries look like. If you have a blockage, it's a simple fix. They put a stent in you and you're good. However, if you don't address this right away and that blockage becomes blocked off more, you die. And that's the, you already have the high troponin levels, which indicated that you had some sort of a heart attack incident. And the problem is, I can't believe they would have let you go home without diagnosing what caused it. So it's a little concerning that they would let you leave the hospital without doing a cardiac CT scan. Anyone out there over the age of 35 should have a cardiac CT scan done routinely, whether it be once every 5 years, but at least get it done at 35 to see if you have blockages in those coronary arteries. It's very easy to determine that. I would not want to walk around knowing that I'm a ticking time bomb at this point. So seriously, address it quickly, get the test done, find out what's going on. If you have no blockages, don't worry about it. If you do, address it.
Question about something I'm not sure if you thought you were going to hear about today, Nubane. This user wants to know if Nubane was responsible for why 90s bodybuilders looked as good as they did, or something as far as responsibility for that.
I don't think the Nubane helped us look any better. I think it probably, if anything, it was a negative. But, it's funny. It's like Nubane was the big thing in the 90s. And like kratom seems to be the big thing today. I don't know what bodybuilders, I guess, seem to get very stressed out, or they feel that opiates somehow, give them a relaxing feeling. To be honest with you, I think that people use opiates because they do blunt your appetite too. Maybe the GLP-1s will take over that and people won't have to do opiates anymore. But we all rationalize what we do, right? Taking kratom is for some people is therapeutic. For other people, it's just because they're bored. Okay. Not a good idea if you're just bored. However, if therapeutically it's helping you to get past some stress or whatever you got going on, that's fine. But probably not a good idea to just take up because you're bored. Same thing with Nubain. We did Nubain because everyone was doing it, and then most people stopped, and some people went on to have problems with it. Luckily, it didn't lead to anything else with me. I just stopped it at some point. But some people, it led into other things like OxyContin and heroin and stuff like that. So it's never a good idea to use recreational drugs. We can rationalize it all we want, at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people just take it to mask some of their emotional problems they have, myself included at the time, So the problem with bodybuilders is we don't like alcohol because we know it's not good for building muscle. Most people just go and have a drink at the bar. We don't do that because we know that it number one, it'll mess your diet up. Number two, it's just not good because it's liver toxic. And so we stay away from that. So, it's like, what's your poison? Everyone has their own poison. That's what it is. But no, Nubain did not help the 90s bodybuilders look better.
Question about Nubain. D-ball. Is 10 mg of D-ball twice a day for 6 weeks enough to get significant gains?
Yeah, usually 20 to 30 milligrams a day is a safe dose. And it is more definitely will give you more strength and maybe some slightly better gains. But as you take more, it starts to kill your appetite a lot more, and it's more toxic. So that 25 to 30 milligram range seems to be ideal to give you the extra boost and gains without affecting appetite too much.
Take a couple of more question about Anavar. In your opinion, would you use Anavar at the beginning of a cycle or at the end, and why?
I don't use Anavar at all in men. I think it's a waste of. It's a very expensive drug. It's a good drug in the sense that it has very little side effects, and that's why women use it. But for men, it's weak. So why would you use a weak drug that's very expensive? Not a good idea.
I was going to go about the Stranger Things one, but you haven't seen the final episode. The final.
No, don't ruin it.
No, yeah, I won't say anything. What's up with you and Paul from Anabolic Bodybuilding? Also, I'm trying to build some muscle in my first cycle in EQ. Is there a safe range test to EQ ratio? How do you keep EQ from shutting down your estrogen and the natural test production?
All right. First of all, EQ doesn't shut down your estrogen production. I can guarantee, go take some testosterone and equipoise and show me your estrogen levels. I can guarantee they're not low. They're probably very high. So that's number one. To me, the ideal rate, it's usually 2 to 1 testosterone to anabolic. So if you take 1,000 milligrams of testosterone, 500 milligrams of EQ is usually ideal. Now some guys will go 600, some guys will go 400, but it's like half of what you do with testosterone you want to do with anabolic. So DECA 400, 500, 600 milligrams a week. Now the only thing you wouldn't do that would be Tren, because Tren is very, very potent. So usually with Tren we do 200 milligrams per week. Of trenananthate or 150 milligrams of trenacetate a week combined with, 1,000 tests. But for the anabolics that are purely anabolic, that are not too androgenic, we usually go 1 to 2. So that's ideal.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder right now on the channel, all new episodes of After Hours podcast, as well as Heavy Muscle Radio. Chris Cito back from vacation, sharing some legendary stories from the days as the technician, dietitian, at Gold's Gym Venice. So you're not going to want to miss that. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our shows, anything that we have coming up on this channel between now and then, of course, the Arnold Classic in less than 9 weeks. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.